Peter Dinklage. Peter Dinklage, Game of Thrones.
You, Peter Dinklage, piece of shit. He costed so many people in my community jobs. He costed so many people.
Peter Dinklage is one of the most recognizable actors on the planet right now. He did not just step into Hollywood and accept the small, boxed-in roles people expected him to play. He pushed past that and built a career that stands on real talent, sharp choices, and serious range. Instead of being reduced to a stereotype, he became a full-blown icon in his own lane. Because of that success, though, he slowly became the unofficial voice anytime the industry started talking about dwarfism. Whether he asked for that role or not, the spotlight kept landing on him whenever representation came up. Now here's where things get tense. After reaching the top, earning major awards, and stacking up serious money, some people in the short stature community started side-eyeing him. The accusation is simple but heavy. They feel like now that he made it, he is pulling the ladder up behind him. Instead of opening more doors, critics claim his comments may have shut a few. That is a bold charge to put on someone who fought hard to escape typecasting, but it is exactly the debate that started brewing online and inside industry circles. So how did one podcast conversation about a controversial movie spiral into a bigger cultural clash that hit people with dwarfism in Hollywood directly? To get why emotions ran so high, you have to rewind and look at the way Hollywood historically treated little people on screen. Back in 1939, The Wizard of Oz cast over 100 little people as munchkins. That film became legendary, but those roles locked in a visual stereotype that lasted for decades. After that, fantasy films and broad comedies through the 80s and 90s often used dwarf actors as magical creatures, background gags, or mystical sidekicks. It was steady work, yes, but the range was tight and the respect was not always there.
Literally no offense to anything, but I was a little taken back by they're very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White.
Yeah.
But you're still telling the story of Snow White.
Snow White, yeah.
Seven Dwarfs.
Sure.
So you're progressive in one way, but you're still making that fucking backward
Oh,
story of seven dwarves living in a cave to get. What the fuck are you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough. They were so proud of that, and all love and respect to the actress and to people who thought they were doing the right thing. But I'm just like, what?
Imagine training as a serious performer, studying the craft, grinding through auditions, only to be told you are best suited to play a fairy tale extra. That limitation builds frustration over time. One of the most respected figures in that fight was Billy Barty. He was not just an actor, he was an activist and the founder of Little People of America. He pushed hard for better treatment, fair pay, and roles that reflected real human depth. His work helped shift the conversation from novelty casting to actual representation. Then came the 80s and 90s wave that started cracking the mold. Warwick Davis stepped into major franchises like Return of the Jedi, Willow, and later Harry Potter. He was not just background decoration. He carried stories. He led scenes. He proved a dwarf actor could anchor a major production and bring box office value. That progress mattered. So when Peter Dinklage entered the acting world in 1995, he was stepping into an industry that was slowly evolving but still stubborn in many ways. He hustled through indie films, took roles that showed complexity, and built his name brick by brick. His rise was not overnight. It was years of grind, rejection, and calculated risks. That journey makes the current backlash even more layered, because some see him as a trailblazer, while others see him as someone who changed the path in a way that might block certain opportunities. In his early years, the roles Peter Dinklage was offered were still small in every sense of the word. Quick cameos, background spots, blink and you miss it appearances. Casting directors often reached for him because of his height first, not because of his range. That pattern was obvious. But here is the part that set him apart. Peter said no. A lot. He turned down jobs that leaned into cheap laughs and tired stereotypes. He refused to be the punchline. That decision cost him money and visibility at the time, but it built something else. It built respect. Still, that kind of stance comes with a price.
Thing where he's saying like, oh, it's bad that we're still doing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, so he doesn't necessarily want that. But as little people actors, it's like, well, we kind of want to work. We kind of want that part. And if that's what's available, then that's what we'd like to do. But at the same time, I get what he's saying. Because, yeah, people are like, well, was it that bad? I go, yeah, because at the time, dwarves really didn't have any representation. So when you say, oh, that my friend's a dwarf, the Rolodex in people's heads goes right to...
When you are selective in an industry that already limits you, the phone does not ring as much. Opportunities shrink. But every actor knows it only takes one real role to flip the whole story. For Peter, that shift came in 2003 with The Station Agent. He played a quiet man who moves to rural New Jersey looking for peace and isolation. The character was layered, funny, awkward, human. He was not written as a stereotype. He was not there for shock value. He was just a man dealing with loneliness and connection like anyone else. Critics responded fast. The film earned strong reviews, and Peter's performance stood out. Casting directors began to notice something that should have been obvious all along. A dwarf actor could lead a film without the story revolving around dwarfism. The character did not need to be defined by height. That realization cracked open a bigger door. Then came 2011. Peter landed the role of Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones. From the first season, it was clear this was different. Tyrion was sharp, flawed, strategic, emotional, dangerous, and hilarious all at once. Over 8 seasons, Peter had more screen time than almost anyone else on the show. He won 4 Emmys and a Golden Globe. He became one of the most recognizable faces on television worldwide. For many in the dwarf community, this felt historic. It looked like proof that pure talent could smash through typecasting and dominate mainstream entertainment. But success at that level changes the pressure. Once you become the symbol of progress, people expect you to represent every voice in the room. That weight is heavy. In January 2022, during an appearance on Marc Maron's podcast, Peter criticized Disney's planned remake of Snow White. He said it felt kind of backwards, adding, no offense to anything, but he was a little taken aback that the studio was proud to cast a Latina actress as Snow White while still planning to tell what he saw as an outdated story about dwarfs living in a cave. Those comments lit a spark that spread quickly, and not everyone agreed with the direction he was taking.
I just wanted to not be a fantasy dwarf. Not to be crass, but I wanted to have a dick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's so like, it's like, you know, when clinically what you are has become sort of poached by the fantasy world as a term for somebody who's not human. Yeah. Like a gnome or an ogre or whatever else. There's a fairy, pixie, leprechaun, elf, everything, dwarf. No, that one's real. That one's actually a thing. There's no gnomes in the world, but that's a thing. So, but therefore, when you do that, you're just clipped. And I was like, I can't be clipped, guys. And they do that with not just
Disney released a careful statement saying they were rethinking their approach and look forward to sharing more as the film heads into production after a lengthy development period. That sounded polite on the surface, but behind the scenes it was clear the studio felt the heat. After Peter Dinklage's podcast comments went viral, Disney did not want to be labeled outdated or insensitive. Instead of casting 7 human dwarf actors as originally expected, they shifted direction and announced they would reimagine the characters as magical creatures of different sizes, races, and genders. The move was meant to look progressive, but it instantly sparked another wave of backlash. Just days later, comedian and little person performer Brad Preacher Williams shared his thoughts on a podcast. He pointed out the tension in Peter's stance. On one hand, Peter seemed to be saying that telling Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs in a traditional way was outdated. On the other hand, actors with dwarfism rely on roles like that to work consistently. As Williams put it, from the perspective of little actors, we kind of want to work. His point was simple. If studios remove these roles in the name of progress, where does that leave the performers who depend on them? To many critics, the most straightforward solution seemed obvious. If Disney wanted inclusiveness, why not hire 7 real dwarf actors and treat the characters with depth and respect instead of turning them into punchlines? That argument gained traction quickly. The reaction was not limited to fans online. Prominent voices within the dwarf community and the entertainment industry stepped in.
The biggest thing is he wants to be progressive, and it's all about progression, and I support that completely, but the issue is him being progressive is eliminating 7 potential dream jobs from the dwarf acting community, and that's my issue here. Is he's saying he wants to move forward and do good for the community when these are dream jobs. I got hired by WWE. WWE was my dream job since I was 4 years old. Since I was 4 years old, all I wanted to be was a WWE superstar. And in any other circumstance, it wouldn't have been able to be done by me. I'm not 6 foot, I'm not 250 pounds, but they were looking for a person like me, a little person, to fill this role. They hired me and I got to live my dream for 10 years. Now there's dwarf actors out there that their dream is to star in a film, especially a Disney film, because as we know, Disney doesn't do remakes or any of their movies at a small scale. They were gonna blow this movie up, obviously. And these are 7 roles roles that are few and far between for dwarves anyways, that were made for us. And that's what's ridiculous to me about the whole situation is it's not being progressive. You're hurting the community by what you're doing. Who put this guy in charge, and why is he the single voice, like, for a whole community?
Jason Weeman Acuna from Jackass spoke out, arguing that with so many skilled short actors available, it made no sense to sideline them. He emphasized that Peter Dinklage himself proved through Game of Thrones that short actors can deliver award-winning performances when given real material. According to that view, the answer is not erasing dwarf roles, but elevating them. Warwick Davis had raised a similar concern years earlier. In 2015, he criticized a UK pantomime production that removed dwarfs from Snow White out of what organizers called political correctness. Warwick argued that the story loses something essential when you strip away those characters entirely. His stance highlighted the core conflict. Is progress about removing traditional roles, or about improving how those roles are written and portrayed? That debate continues to divide opinions across the industry. Warwick Davis had already made his stance clear years earlier when debates like this first started heating up. He said, "I've been in a lot of pantos, and I don't think it's offensive at all. I'm sure that there are those out there who don't like the term, but as a short actor, I want to be given the choice about whether I appear in the panto or not. I don't want someone making that decision for me." That line about choice hit hard. For many performers with dwarfism, the real issue was not the role itself. It was who gets to decide whether that role should even exist. Fast forward to October 27th, 2023. Disney released the first official image from the new Snow White film. This time, it revealed that the 7 magical creatures were now 7 CGI dwarfs. Not real actors, not reimagined human characters. Fully computer-generated. By then, the conversation had shifted again. What started as a debate about representation had turned into something bigger and messier, and the controversy did not stop there. Throughout 2024, as production continued and the marketing push ramped up, lead actress Rachel Zegler made headlines for several comments during interviews. She praised colorblind casting and described the original 1937 Snow White as weird. She also made public remarks about Donald Trump and voiced strong opinions about the Israel-Palestine conflict, which reportedly created tension with co-star Gal Gadot, who has been open about her own views. All of this unfolded during the film's press tour. Instead of the spotlight staying on the movie itself, it kept drifting back to off-screen drama. By the time Snow White was nearing release, the backlash had snowballed. Online discourse was intense. Critics attacked the casting choices, the CGI dwarfs, the political comments, and even the studio's handling of the entire rollout. Before the film even reached theaters, many people were already calling it a disaster. On March 13, 2025, Disney held a smaller-scale premiere, seemingly to control the narrative and reduce public blowback. But the criticism did not disappear. If anything, it grew louder. Still, not everyone condemned the CGI decision.
A bad thing. I'm not agreeing with it. One, because what they're doing is pretty much you're replacing jobs that people could have as little people. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, it's 4 dwarfs. What we were discussing too the other day was the Wonka movie. And Hugh Grant is now playing an Oompa Loompa. So I guess, Hugh Grant, you're now identifying as a little person.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
I mean, right? Okay, well, I know Peter Dinklage, criticized the film for having little people play dwarves because he said it typecast them.
It totally does. But I do think that this is Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. Why are you hiring Snow White and the 7 average?
Martin Kleba, a short actor who voiced Grumpy in the new version, defended the studio's approach. He argued that casting 7 little people is not as simple as it sounds. You would need 7 trained actors who not only fit the roles, but also work well together on screen. Chemistry matters, timing matters, skill matters. His defense added another layer to the debate. For some, CGI looked like erasure. For others, it was a practical production choice in a complicated situation. Martin Kleba did not hold back when sharing his opinion. He said, "I don't know. Other than Mr. Dinkle or Warwick Davis, there's only a couple of guys out there that really could pull off the acting." That comment alone stirred debate. Some people felt he was being realistic about how small the talent pool is for highly demanding roles. Others felt it sounded dismissive toward many working actors with dwarfism who have spent years training and grinding for opportunities. When asked about little people who chose not to audition for the voice roles, Martin made his stance clear. He said they were welcome to try out for the voiceover parts. If they decided not to, that was their right. He explained that he personally did not see the CGI move as an insult. In his words, "I was like, look."
Peter Dinklage has done a lot of roles where his height has been utilised, and I believe he has done Snow White and Seven Dwarfs pantomime before to elevate his career. A lot of my colleagues as well have done that and got into, because you get acting credits from doing such things as pantomime. And his height was made fun of in Game of Thrones. There was derogatory comments made towards him throughout the series.
Like Peter Dinklage, yes, what they showed in Game of Thrones, because like he said, no pointy shoes, no beard, so it wasn't the stereotypical dwarf. And yes, he showed the abuse that you kind of get, but also he had the comebacks. He was a rounded character, not just this thing that sneezed.
There's a lot of dwarf actors that do want to play this role, which is why there are protests coming up for this. And I would have loved to played a part in it. Okay. And there's many other colleagues that I know that would have loved to play the part.
If it's going to be CG, then they're going to look at me as an actor, and they're just giving me an opportunity. I was one of the 7 that got to be a voice of one of the most iconic franchises ever, so that's why I did it. I'm not mad at Disney. Like I said, they're the ones who fed me, and they're the ones who allowed me to have the life that I've had. For him, it was about steady work and loyalty to a studio that had consistently hired him. That perspective added another twist to the situation. It raised a quiet but uncomfortable question. Would Martin have felt the same way if he had not already been cast in 2 major Disney projects? It is hard to ignore that personal success can shape how someone views a controversy like this. When you are benefiting from the system, you may not see the cracks the same way others do. After the film's release, more short actors stepped forward. Dr. Aaron Pritchard and performer George Toon Tan appeared on British morning television and criticized Peter Dinklage's stance. They suggested he may have been hypocritical and argued that his comments unintentionally made it harder for other dwarf actors to land traditional roles. One of them pointed out that Peter himself had taken parts earlier in his career where his height was central to the story. They mentioned pantomime work and stage roles where his stature was referenced directly, arguing that many actors use those stepping stones to build credentials and gain exposure. Then, on May 28, 2025, actor and comedian Horn Swindle spoke on a podcast and doubled down on his frustration. He said he does not like Peter Dinklage and claimed that Peter's influence cost many people real jobs. He framed it as a power imbalance. In his view, when you are the most recognizable little person in the world, your words carry serious weight. Studios listen. Executives adjust plans. And sometimes those adjustments ripple down to working actors who are not household names. At this point, the debate was no longer just about Snow White. It had turned into a deeper divide within the dwarf acting community itself, with some seeing Peter as a trailblazer protecting dignity, and others seeing him as someone whose stance unintentionally closed doors that were already hard to push open.
You're one of the most recognizable little people on the planet.
You, Peter Dinklage, piece of shit.
That's real heat, too.
I can hate him. He costed so many people in my community jobs with that Snow White bullshit. Pisses me off. Like, he costed so many people jobs. So many people.
Because he wanted to be the only dwarf.
You know what? I don't think that. I think he wanted to make a statement, and he thought he was making some cool, hip thing, but it wasn't. When he did Elf, that check cashed just fine. Tyrion Lannister was a role for a little person. He cashed that check. I'm okay not going out for Brad Pitt's role. Give me Grumpy or Happy or Sleepy. In a major Disney remake?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're going to have 7 dwarves, then their extras, then their stunt doubles that are all going to get...
Brad Williams and Hornswoggle have made it clear they are not brushing this off. In their view, Peter Dinklage had more power than almost anyone else in that position. They argue he could have stepped in as a producer, helped shape the script, or pushed to hire more little people behind the scenes. Instead, they feel he acted like a gatekeeper. One harsh take floating around is that Dinklage was willing to accept certain roles earlier in his career when it benefited him, then criticized similar roles once he no longer needed them. Some critics even say he pulled the stepping stool behind him, suggesting that once he climbed to the top, he made the climb harder for others. What makes this situation hit harder is the missed opportunity. Disney had a real chance to update the story in a bold way. The 7 Dwarfs could have been rewritten with real depth, complex personalities, and meaningful arcs. They could have been heroes in their own right instead of simple archetypes from 1937. Imagine 7 skilled dwarf actors leading scenes, delivering emotional moments, and reshaping how audiences see those characters. That would have been a powerful shift. Some believe Peter could have used his influence differently. With his status and credibility, he might have produced a version that modernized the characters instead of dismissing the concept entirely. Rather than removing the roles, he could have redefined them. That is the argument his critics keep circling back to. At the same time, it is impossible to ignore what Peter Dinklage has accomplished. He shattered ceilings. He proved that a performer with dwarfism could dominate a global hit series, win major awards, and command serious respect in Hollywood. He changed perceptions about what success could look like for someone with dwarfism. That legacy is real and cannot be erased. The tension comes from how influence works. When someone at that level speaks, studios react. Executives shift strategies. Plans get rewritten. Even if there was no bad intention, the ripple effect can still impact working actors who rely on specific roles to stay employed. Some feel that by pushing for removal instead of reinvention, he unintentionally made dwarf-centered roles feel too risky for studios to touch. This whole situation leaves the community divided and the industry cautious. Was this about protecting dignity, or did it narrow opportunities even further? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe to the Beyond Fame channel, share this video, and I will catch you in the next one.